All right, please stand for the Philippine National Anthem.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang magiliw, helas ng sinakanan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyag ka ng magiting, sa manluluping, di ka pasisingil, sa nagatang tutok sa simoy at sa langit kong pagaw, ay hinatang tula, kawin sa pagkayang minamahal, ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na naghihingi, ang bituin at araw niya kailan ang ay di magtitingin. Luman ang araw ng walhati pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya na pagkay mga amin, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
All right, good morning to our speakers and distinguished guests from the government, the diplomatic community, the private sector, the academe, and think tanks. Welcome to our forum on the 70 years of Philippine-German relations, a new era of defense cooperation. I am Joyce Reyes. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for External Affairs of the Strat-Based Institute, and I will also be your host and moderator for today. So this event is organized by the Strat-Based Institute in partnership with the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung Philippines. Now, just last year, Philippines and Germany marked 70 years of diplomatic relations, highlighting key milestones and a shared commitment to peace in the West Philippine Sea through a joint declaration of intent on cooperation in the maritime sector. And this was signed by President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Now, in a historic first, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius visited the Philippines last year, and together with Philippine Defense Secretary Gilbert Teodoro, agreed to formalize a defense pact aimed at expanding military cooperation. Now, just last week, the Philippine and German governments signed a defense cooperation agreement, which aims to expand cooperation between the two defense and military establishments in the fields of cybersecurity, defense armament and logistics, and UN peacekeeping. And that is why today we are gathering key experts, policymakers, and stakeholders to share insights and discuss recommendations that will strengthen the bilateral defense ties between Philippines and Germany and promote a unified, proactive stance on security in the West Philippine Sea. But before we begin, I would like to acknowledge first the different groups of friends that we have here this morning. Joining us today, we have officials from the Armed Forces of the Philippines. We have officials from the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Thank you for joining us today. We also have officials from the Philippine Navy, from the Philippine Coast Guard, from the House of Representatives, from the VFA Commission, the Embassy of Netherlands, the Embassy of Japan. We also have the German Chamber of Commerce. We also have from the Academe, the College of St. Benilde, and also, of course, our friends from the media. Again, thank you very much for joining us this morning. So to officially open today's event, allow me to call on the president of the Strat-Based Institute, Professor Victor Andres Dindo Manhit, to deliver the opening remarks. Let's give him a round of applause, please.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our forum entitled 70 Years of Philippine-German Relations, a New Era of Defense Cooperation. We continue to thank our guests and later our speakers, and of course our partner from Konrad, Daniela, and our dear Ambassador, Ambassador Andreas. In today's evolving geopolitical landscape, it is undeniable that strengthening partnerships to address shared challenges and achieve shared goals is more crucial than ever. As a maritime and an archipelagic nation, the Philippines places paramount importance on its national interest in the West Philippine Sea. which serves as the lifeblood of our nation. In doing so, the current administration continues to implement a two-pronged strategy, strengthening our external defense capabilities and establishing strategic partnership with like-minded states. One of the countries with which the Philippines shares a strong bond is Germany. Our two countries have demonstrated a strong and enduring partnership, particularly in enhancing maritime security and promoting regional stability. Germany has long been valued defense partner of the Philippines, dating back as far as 1974, the 1974 Administrative Agreement. The signing of a defense agreement between our countries just last week is a testament to the strength of this relationship. This is expected to open more avenues for cooperation, including in key areas such as cybersecurity, defense armaments, logistics, and even United Nations peacekeeping operations. The agreement also paved way for the third Philippines-Germany Security and Defense Staff talks, which will facilitate joint activities in the coming year. The message is quite clear. Responsible members of the international community, such as the Philippines and Germany, will continue to work together to ensure a free and open Indo-Pacific. And with our like-minded partners, the Philippines will continue to champion a rules-based international order, one that upholds freedom of navigation, territorial sovereignty, and regional stability. I remember in 2013 when we filed a case against our northern neighbor, China, the Institute and our chairperson, the late Secretary Albert Rosar, spoke of the great equalizer is the rules-based international order. Nobody even believed, even in the Philippines, that it can be done. And here we are today with like-minded nations supporting the Filipino nation. And the Strat-Based Institute, a staunch advocate of these principles, look forward to the new era of defense cooperation between the Philippines and Germany. The Institute strongly supports the beginning of a broader defense cooperation, recognizing its vital role in ensuring security, establishing a deterrent defense posture, and promoting long-term strategic alliance in the Indo-Pacific. Again, good morning, and thank you for joining us.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Dindo Manhit. Now to deliver a special message, it is an honor to have with us today the Ambassador of the Embassy of the Federal Republic of Germany to the Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome His Excellency Andreas Michael Fafanoshka. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, Dindo, you already said almost all, but I will be maybe a bit more extensive because I got 20 minutes for a keynote speech. So let me start formally by greeting Honorable General Cordova, Deputy Chief of Plans, if I'm not mistaken, the representative of Rear Admiral Trinidad, the spokesperson of the Navy for the West Philippine Sea, of course, the Honorable Professor Manhit. Dear Dindo, thanks for having me today and for inviting me. Dear Daniela, country representative of Konrad Adenauer Foundation. Dear guests, dear friends of Germany, dear friends of German-Filipino relations, good morning. Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. It's really a pleasure for me to be here today and to stand in front of you, having been invited by Stratbase and Konrad Adenauer Foundation to deliver a keynote on 70 years of Philippine-German relations, a new era of defense cooperation. It's good to see Konrad Adenauer Foundation and Stratbase working hand in hand on this important topic. Thank you very much for the initiative. This forum today could not be more timely, as just last week, as it was already referred to by Professor Manhit, the Honorable Secretary of National Defense of the Republic of the Philippines, Gilbert Teodoro, embarked, if I'm not mistaken, on his first official trip to Europe in his current function. And on May 14th, just less than a week ago, he signed the Philippine-German arrangement on defense cooperation, together with his German counterpart, Federal Minister of Defense Boris Pistorius, whom he had met here in Manila in August last year. The signing took place in the margins of the Ministerial Peacekeeping Conference organized by the German government in Berlin, hosted by the new Federal Foreign Affairs Minister, Johann Wadephul, and Defense Minister Boris Pistorius in his new function or his renowned function as Minister of Defense. More than 130 countries were represented, underlining the importance of peacekeeping for effective multilateralism. And let me quote Germany's new Foreign Minister, Wadephul, who said, and I quote, "No nation can achieve peace and security for its citizens on its own, but only through partners and strong institutions." End of quote. This is also what is behind the signing of the bilateral defense cooperation arrangement on May 14. For everyone closely following developments in security policy, it was a logical consequence looking at the global policy situation and at the dynamics of German-Filipino relations. Allow me to elaborate briefly, not year by year over the last 75 years, don't worry, but on some highlights of our defense cooperation in the past. The defense ministries of our countries have had intermittent connections in the context of security and military policy. Professor Dindo Manhit already referred to the agreement of 1974, so 71 years back. Beginning in the 70s, several Filipino officers attended the Command and General Staff Course of the Naval Command at the Führungsakademie, which is the management academy of the Federal German Army, the Bundeswehr, in Hamburg. Over the years, more than 30 officers took part. There were also German Navy ships in Manila, and in 2014, ministerial level talks took place between the DND and the German Ministry of Defense in Berlin. However, sadly, I have to say this cooperation lost a bit of its dynamic in the past, not due to political directives, regulations, or restrictions, but mainly because of different priorities. Security in the Philippines was mainly understood as internal security, while Germany's security was being defended at the famous Hindu Kush in Afghanistan or against piracy off the coast of Somalia. These were two concepts that could hardly have been more contradictory. The military as a key factor for internal security in the Philippines, and the military as a force for out-of-area cooperation and operations for the German government. Despite that, on a tactical level, of course, similar methods of warfare, such as counterinsurgency or anti-piracy, were employed. Later on, it was certainly due to the pandemic that made us aware in Germany, in Europe, as well as here in the Philippines, how interconnected we are all across borders, and how dependent a country like Germany, heavily reliant on exports and trade, is on open sea lanes and on partners that share our commitment. Under the slogan, "Shaping the 21st Century Together," this was institutionalized with the publication of the German government's policy guidelines for the Indo-Pacific in 2020, a forward-looking strategic guidepost for the direction of Germany's foreign policy. Soon after, events dramatically reshaped Germany's security and military policy, more than 30 years after the end of the Cold War. The withdrawal of the NATO-led Afghanistan mission in 2021 and the illegal and brutal Russian aggression of Ukraine in February 22 made painfully clear just how fragile the rules-based international order is and how closely our interests are connected, as also the Philippine angle has changed and shifted dramatically. From the army being a factor to guarantee internal security, to an army that is facing more and more external threats, mainly in the West Philippine Sea, where China's aggressive behavior is putting pressure on the capacities of the Philippine armed forces. So the new Philippine government has started to look for like-minded partners willing to defend the rules-based international order and to cooperate more closely also in practical terms with the Philippine Armed Forces. Dear friends, Russia's attack on Ukraine was a wake-up call to all of us and proved that we are in danger to get back to something we thought to have overcome. War becomes more and more again considered as a means to reach political objectives. No longer does only the rules-based international order guide the behavior of nations, but military strength seems to become more and more an option for some in this world. After years of reaping the so-called peace dividend, equally to budget cuts and defense spending, it became clear that Germany had to confront the new realities. Continuing as before and hoping for the best is no longer an option. In 2023, therefore, Defense Minister Pistorius issued the new defense policy guidelines, the first of its kind since the founding of the German Federal Army. These guidelines made it clear that we are fully aware of our limited capabilities, particularly when it comes to global operations. Even though we regularly demonstrate our ability to project forces globally, such as through the regular Indo-Pacific deployments with a naval task group here in Manila in 2024 in September, Eurofighters in Hawaii, or soldiers even in Australia. But these missions are limited in duration and serve mainly as a clear political commitment to our strong interest in enforcing global security and safeguarding the rules-based international order. The defense policy guidelines of 23 marked a decisive shift in Germany's strategic thinking, one that reflects the dramatic change in our present security environment. Let me highlight a few examples. Among the strategic priorities, there is now a powerful and timely commitment, and I quote, to contribute to the preservation of the rules-based international order, end of quote. This simple sentence captures a profound change in perspective. It recognizes that Germany, as a leading democracy and economic power, bears a responsibility that extends well beyond its own borders. In an increasingly fragmented world, where power politics threaten to replace international law, we must actively help safeguard the principles that underpin global peace and stability. When it comes to the core mission of the Federal German Army, there is no ambiguity. National defense remains the top priority. The fundamental task of defending our territory, our people, and our allies under the NATO framework stands at the heart of German defense policy. In an era where deterrence has regained importance, this is both a necessary and a logical foundation. Yet, what follows immediately as a strategic priority is equally important and highly relevant to our international partnerships and our bilateral cooperation with the Philippines. And I quote again, stabilizing and building resilient partners as a contribution to international crisis management and to peace. End of quote. This second strategic mission of the German Federal Army is built around three essential pillars. The first one, strengthening the security structures of partners and regional organizations. This means providing targeted support through training, capacity building, or advisory missions to help our partners to develop credible and sustainable defense institutions. Security cannot be outsourced, but it can be strengthened through solidarity and collaboration. The second pillar, establishing and maintaining bilateral military and security relationships. Long-term partnerships, as we all know, do not emerge overnight. They are the result of trust, shared values, and sustained engagement. Germany is investing in such relationships, not only within NATO and the EU, but globally, including here in Southeast Asia. Defense diplomacy, joint exercises, and exchange programs all play a vital role in this regard. And the third pillar, supporting arms control efforts and confidence and security building measures. This is not being limited to promoting arms control and confidence building, seeking to reduce risks and prevent escalation, but to be transparent and foreseeable regarding export control to partner nations. So you can easily see, dear friends, Germany's decision to deepen defense cooperation with the Philippines is not accidental. It's strategic, based on policy guidelines, based on pillars, based on policy decisions. And it is timely and based on the convergence of interests, values, and regional dynamics. The Philippines are at the heart of the Indo-Pacific, one of the most dynamic yet contested regions in the world. Its geographical location along critical sea lanes, especially in the South China Sea, makes it a key player in ensuring freedom of navigation, maritime security, and thereby the rules-based international order. For Germany, whose economy depends heavily on global trade and open sea lanes, contributing to ensuring maritime stability in the region is not a pure matter of principles and even less of charity. It's a matter of national interest. The Philippines has consistently shown strong commitment to international law, including the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Germany, as a strong advocate of multilateralism and legal norms in international relations, appreciates the Philippines as a strong and reliable partner that shares this fundamental principle, particularly in response to maritime tensions in the region. Germany's evolving defense policy under the 2023 Defense Policy Guidelines includes a focus on capacity building, crisis prevention, and security partnerships. The Philippines, with its need to modernize its armed forces and strengthen its maritime domain awareness, presents a context where German support can make a concrete and strategic impact. Germany is not aiming to project power unilaterally. We neither have the capacity, nor would that be in line with our political philosophy. But we are looking to build resilient, sovereign partners. The Philippines aligns very well with this philosophy. Ladies and gentlemen, as the Philippines and Germany celebrated 70 years of diplomatic relations in 2024, highlighted by the visit of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. in Germany in March, and the visit of then Federal Foreign Minister Baerbock to Manila in January 24, and Federal Defense Minister Pistorius to Manila in August, both sides reaffirmed their mutual commitments to peace and stability in the region, as well as our relations built on trust and mutual respect. Both countries are democracies committed to peaceful cooperation and bound by shared historical experiences, including academic development and now increasingly defense cooperation. Let me take this opportunity also to congratulate the Filipino people to the recent successful democratic exercise, the elections on May 12th, where more than 57 million Filipinos went to the polls to elect their leaders in a very orderly and coordinated manner. This is a powerful proof of a vital and vibrant democracy. Dear friends, Germany's partnership with the Philippines also sends a broader message to the region and to the world. Germany is serious about its Indo-Pacific commitment. It's a signal of support, not just to the Philippines, but to other ASEAN countries, which are balancing national interests and strategic pressures in a complex environment. Some words on recent developments in our bilateral defense cooperation. It was already in 2023 that informal exchanges in Berlin and during the Shangri-La dialogue in Singapore laid the foundation for what became a remarkably dynamic year for Philippine-German defense cooperation. The start was done in Manila in January 24, with the launch of official interagency relations between the Philippine Department of National Defense and the German Federal Ministry of Defense through the renewed German-Filipino security policy staff talks. Let me quote my defense attaché who participated in this exercise. Not a mere exchange of pleasantries, but from the very beginning, a meeting aimed at achieving common objectives, end of quote. One of the outcomes were the bilateral cooperation talks, which took place then subsequently in July last year in Berlin, between Germany's Armed Forces Department for International Cooperation and the Armed Forces of the Philippines to initiate again military training assistance and cooperation, including the drafting of the first biannual cooperation program. And we had more significant milestones. I already mentioned that in August 24, German Defense Minister Pistorius visited Manila, the first visit of a German defense minister in the Philippines ever, and publicly announced with his host, Secretary Teodoro, the intention to sign a bilateral arrangement on defense cooperation, starting a new phase in strategic partnership. In September 24 last year, many of you might remember, as part of the Indo-Pacific Deployment 24, a German Navy task group made a port call in Manila after transiting the Taiwan Strait. And in parallel, Germany's State Secretary for Defense, Hilmer, conducted a high-level visit to the Philippines. And while in 24, the first Philippine officers were already joining courses and training programs in Germany, the most recent major milestone for the Philippine-German Defense Cooperation took place last week, the famous signing of the Philippine-German Arrangement on Defense Cooperation. Only one day later, May 15, the next round of German-Filipino security policy staff talks were held in the German Federal Ministry of Defense, with the aim to operationalize the next steps and lines to take in order to develop the bilateral cooperation to a new step. Let me be clear, this is not symbolic cooperation. This is not a talking shop. This is a structured, result-oriented partnership that is already generating real outcomes. The arrangement is proof of the political will of both parties to foster cooperation of like-minded partners. Its main objective is to promote and strengthen bilateral cooperation on defense on the basis of reciprocity and mutual benefit. Even if in line with established international practice, publication of the arrangement is not foreseen, I'm entitled to tell you that the main areas of cooperation defined in the arrangement are technical cooperation in security and defense policy between all services of the armed forces, including cybersecurity, training of military and civilian members of the military forces, as well as capacity building and cooperation on UN peacekeeping operation and in humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. Official and working level visits of all branches of both armed forces, as well as regular staff talks on security and defense policy, will be reinforced in the future. Participation in exercises and practical training of military will increase. Germany is proud that this year, for the second time, an observer of the German army was invited and able to participate in the Balikatan exercise after the successful first ever observer participation last year in 24, a clear signal of trust and reinforced cooperation. Dear friends, we should see this cooperation as the beginning of a new chapter rather than the peak of 70 years of partnership through shared responsibility and strategic trust and global solidarity. The German-Philippine Defense Cooperation and Relationship represents a model for responsive and responsible international cooperation in our more and more unpredictable world, while strengthening bilateral defense ties. Our partnership should advance through increasing strength and substance and inspirational power that drives other nations towards cooperative approaches over confrontational methods and legal solutions over military power and peaceful relations instead of a fear-based system. I'm very optimistic that given the level of trust between our governments and the shared analysis of the current global challenges, our cooperation will bear fruits and contribute to an even more constructive and fruitful partnership in the future, helping to safeguard the rules-based international order and the political interests of both our countries. I wish this forum fruitful and interesting discussions, and I thank again the organizers for the opportunity to speak to you. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope I was not too long. Thank you very much. Salamat po. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Andreas Papanoshka. Again, let's give him another round of applause for that very insightful keynote message. Yeah. One of the main advocacies that we push for in Stratbase is strategic collaboration, particularly with our international partners. So it's very interesting and it's very touching whenever we hear ambassadors from different countries talk about how they how they want to work with the Philippines. Especially, I'm sure the military officials here are familiar with how much little support we had in the previous administration. But now we have Germany, we have Japan, Japan with the reciprocal access agreement. We have we're in talks with France, Canada, and New Zealand for a visiting forces agreement. Of course, there's US and all other countries who are expressing their support for the Philippines. So it's always a good moment whenever we hear support from like-minded countries. All right. Having said that, we would also like to recognize some important personalities and important partners in upholding the rules-based order here in the Philippines. They are our government officials who have been in the forefront of upholding and defending the sovereignty of our country. So allow me to recognize the Assistant Director General of Planning and Knowledge Management of the National Security Council, Major General Cornelio Valencia Jr. Hello, sir. All right. Also here with us, the spokesperson of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, Colonel Francel Taborlupa. Thank you for joining us, ma'am. Also with us today, the commander of the Coast Guard Special Operations Force, Rear Admiral Inocencio Rosario. All right. Thank you, sir. And of course, the former Deputy Chief of Staff for Plans of J5 of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, Major General Restituto Padilla. Thank you for joining us today. All right. And to commence today's discussions, our first speaker will discuss the alignment of the Philippine-German defense agreement with a comprehensive archipelagic defense concept. He is the Deputy Chief of Staff for Plans, or J5, of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Major General Romel Cordova. Let's give him a round of applause, please.
Distinguished guests, excellencies, good morning. First of all, let me thank Professor Manhit of the Stratbase Institute and, of course, the Conrad Adenauer Foundation for having me. This is very timely indeed, as the ambassador has said earlier. Last week, I was just in Berlin. I accompanied the Secretary of National Defense during the UN Peacekeeping Ministerial Meeting, where he announced new pledges for our UN peacekeeping participation. I also witnessed the signing of the Defense Cooperation Arrangement. I was in the back, so we were not in the picture. And the following day, we had the meeting on the second Defense Policy Staff Talk with the Assistant Secretary for International Affairs, Assistant Secretary Euro, and her counterpart from the International Cooperation Department of the Ministry of Defense of Germany. So yeah, this is a very timely, again, but just very recent agreements, and we are talking about cooperation as it happens. Now, my task today is to present how our interests align, particularly with the comprehensive archipelagic defense concept, the new defense concept of the armed forces of the Philippines and the Department of National Defense. Now, most of the things, actually, the alignment has been raised already by initial welcome message of Professor Manhit and, of course, of the ambassador. So I'd like add a few of those things and focus more on the more practical alignment mechanisms. In the face of rising regional tensions and shifting balance of power, the nexus of security and development provides an essential lens for understanding the underlying dynamics and structural challenges of the global and regional arena. Heightened geopolitical competition often places economic interests at risk, as key actors do not only execute armed aggression, but also resort to coercive economic practices, weaponizing trade and financial tools to advance strategic objectives. Understanding the economic and security dynamics provides valuable insight into the nuanced strategies and direction pursued by states as they address shared risks and evolving threats. The Indo-Pacific region is experiencing rapid economic growth, but also faces increasing strategic uncertainty. And this uncertainty is shared not only by us in the region, but also by those outside of the region, like Germany. While it is home to some of the world's fastest growing economies and vibrant trade networks, rising maritime disputes, power rivalries, and military buildups have created a fragile security environment. For key regional actors, the security of maritime and shipping trade routes remains a primary concern, as these vital corridors for global commerce face growing risks amid escalating regional tensions. The paradox of a vibrant economy with a tense region underscores the urgency for collaboration, supported by sustained efforts to build trust, uphold international law, and foster inclusive and transparent multilateralism. Any escalation of conflict would risk free access to maritime trade routes and stability in the supply chains. Thus, Germany's strategic interest to keep security and stability in the Indo-Pacific region is well-founded, as the region plays a critical role in charting the future of the global economy and security. Any initiative that seeks to play an active and constructive role in the region is viewed favorably, particularly those that contribute to peace, stability, and adherence to international law. In this context, the revitalization of the Philippine-Germany defense cooperation comes at an ideal time, offering a valuable opportunity for collaboration on shared interests and values. Despite our geographic distance, our renewed cooperation is underpinned by our parallel experiences shaped by comparable security context. The security context of the Philippines is stricken by persistent and escalating threats undermining the country's sovereignty, sovereign rights, and jurisdiction over its territorial areas and maritime zones. Further complicating the security environment is the hybrid threat posed by adversaries who intend to exploit the socio-political vulnerabilities to create ambiguity and weaken the country's decision-making, resilience, and effective response. The prevalence of assertive and aggressive actions against the Philippines, particularly in the West Philippine Sea, increases the potential for armed conflict. Equally alarming are the creeping covert acts that seek to weaken the country internally by influencing key decision makers, weakening social cohesion, and controlling critical infrastructures. These illegal, coercive, aggressive, and deceptive activities or ICAD activities against the Philippines are sufficient to warrant the use of force, but the Philippines is committed in setting differences through diplomacy and amicable means. Considering the complexity of the security environment, our president, President Marcos, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, has framed the country's approach in upholding and preserving the country's territorial integrity, putting forward the archipelagic doctrine enshrined in the 1982 United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea, or the UNCLOS. The president has emphasized that the country's collective action shall be grounded on international law. Following this directive, the Department of National Defense and the Armed Forces of the Philippines conceptualized a reframed defense concept, enabling the defense and the armed forces to assert the country's sovereignty, sovereign rights, and jurisdiction within the bounds of international law. This reframed approach is the comprehensive archipelagic defense concept, designed to project the armed forces' capability up to the Philippine Economic Exclusive Zone and its extended continental shelf, to extend and enhance the overall defense of the Philippine territory. At the center of the CADC is the effort to build up the armed forces' capabilities to create effective presence and deterrence. Reinforcing the CADC is the national military strategy, underpinned by the strategic principles of deterrence by denial and forward defense. These strategic principles aim to dissuade the adversaries from taking progressive actions and to prevent threat escalation through a strategic positioning of forces in key maritime zones and territorial areas. In executing this strategy, the AAP aims to develop a flexible, adaptable, multi-domain joint force. In essence, the AAP shall ensure that the joint force is capable of rapidly shifting, dispersing, and concentrating while effectively calibrating the force according to the changing conditions of the operational environment. The multi-domain characteristic of the joint force recognizes the hybrid character of the operational environment. It highlights the need to continue bolstering the armed forces' conventional capabilities while enhancing capabilities for cyber, the electromagnetic spectrum, space, and cognitive domains. The AP also puts an equal weight in pursuing collective security as a means to execute the strategy. The AP shall engage like-minded states inclined to preserve the rules-based international order to promote multilateral security arrangements within and beyond the region. The trajectory is to expand, to deepen, and diversify our strategic partnerships. The shifting strategic landscape provides opportunities for countries to align interests and harness collective strengths to preserve the rules-based international order. Leveraging the unique strengths and strategic positions could potentially create an effective approach in dealing with the complexities of the global and regional security environment. The renewed interest of the Philippines and Germany to expand defense and security engagement is indicative of the evolving security dynamics and mutual concerns. But more importantly, it reflects our country's shared values and interests. The recently signed Philippine-German Defense Cooperation Arrangement serves as a testament to the shared resolve of both countries to broaden and diversify their strategic partnership across key areas of interest. The foundation of the Philippines and Germany defense cooperation rests on shared interests and values. Germany's strong interest in promoting a rules-based international order underpinned by an effective multilateralism and grounded in shared principle is particularly valuable in the context of the rising regional tensions and the disputes in the Indo-Pacific. The intention to engage the region in reaffirming international norms and rules and in advocating for the consistent respect and enforcement of international law provide an opportunity to create a climate of mutual trust. Doing so, Germany could effectively contribute to fortifying existing regional structures and frameworks like the ASEAN, fostering constructive and effective security dialogues, and facilitating peaceful settlement of disputes in accordance with international law. Ultimately, Germany's diversification of partnership aims to reduce unilateral dependencies that potentially increases confidence of states in the region to assert their rights and sovereignty. Additionally, the promotion of access of facts-based information to counter disinformation would also be valuable in the region. In the same vein, the Philippines remains committed in pursuing diplomatic approaches in managing the tensions in the West Philippine Sea. The CADC and the NMS frames the employment of the armed forces within the bounds of international law, with primary consideration of the archipelagic doctrine espoused in the UNCLOS and the maritime entitlements provided in the 2016 arbitral ruling. However, the lack of information enforcement mechanism and disregard with the provisions of UNCLOS in the 2016 arbitral ruling pose a serious challenge in the implementation of rules-based international order in the West Philippine Sea in the greater Indo-Pacific region. This is not only a Philippine concern, but to an even greater extent, the freedom of navigation of all like-minded nations using the waterway for peaceful purposes is jeopardized. In addition, the spread of misinformation, disinformation, and malign influence poses significant risks and challenges to defense policy, as it undermines strategic communications, erodes public trust, and complicates the effective implementation of national security and military initiatives. In this context, Germany's strong commitment to international law is well aligned with the underlying principles of CADC and the NMS. Enforcement of UNCLOS in the region would significantly contribute to Philippines' assertion of sovereignty, sovereign rights, and jurisdiction over the country's territorial areas and maritime zones. Effort to strengthen security structures and frameworks and to foster constructive and effective security dialogue could potentially de-escalate tension in the region and promote peaceful settlement of disputes. Also, the promotion of fact-based information is vital in countering misinformation, disinformation, and malign influence, thereby contributing to more informed public discourse, enhanced transparency, and resilience of democratic institutions. The execution of CADC and the NMS relies on two critical aspects: the modernization of the armed forces and the pursuit of collective security. The apparent disregard to international law, particularly the UNCLOS, and excessive claims in the South China Sea do not elicit trust and has become a source of regional tensions. In the era of escalating tensions, that increases the likelihood of conflict. Fostering collective security in the region is vital. Hence, the Philippines and Germany should collaborate closely on the promotion of international rules and norms and peaceful dispute resolution in keeping regional security. Second, the enforcement of international law like UNCLOS in the region benefits the interests of both parties. For Germany, it ensures the freedom of navigation and that shipping routes are free and open to any party. For the Philippines, it preserves national security and helps in asserting the country's sovereignty, sovereign rights, and jurisdiction over legally recognized territorial areas and maritime zones. Thirdly, we should harness collective strength of like-minded states to dissuade potential adversaries from taking aggressive action, thus preventing any escalation of conflict in the region. Lastly, enhancing interoperability through combined exercises and training not only enhance readiness, but also demonstrate unity and reinforce the credibility of collective security and commitments. Another critical element to the execution of CADC and the NMS is the modernization of the armed forces. The AP recognizes that taking proactive steps to enhance our defense capabilities can contribute to building trust and confidence with our bilateral partners. In this essence, the Philippines and Germany are heading the right way of focusing on confidence building measures, that is establishing trust is essential for gaining a clearer understanding of our alignment of interest and common ground, which lay the foundation for deeper collaboration and mutually beneficial outcomes. Knowledge exchange and expertise and sharing on areas of organization development, planning, and policy making would further capacitate the armed forces by learning new methods and approaches. Capacitating the joint force through military education and training to elevate the skills of the joint force is also very important, particularly in areas like cybersecurity, in also encountering misinformation, disinformation, and malign influence. The capability development of the armed forces shall focus on developing a joint force ready to execute multi-domain operations. Thus, the AAP is prioritizing the bolstering conventional capabilities for air, sea, and land domains, particularly air defense capabilities, while enhancing capabilities for emerging domains like cyber, space, electromagnetic spectrum, and the cognitive domains. Executing the CADC and the NMS requires effective and enhanced situational awareness to improve decision-making and enable effective response. Information sharing enhances the country's capacity to monitor, assess, and respond to the evolving security environment. By aligning perspectives and sharing timely and relevant data, both sides can improve situational awareness and anticipate emerging threats and coordinate more effectively in pursuit of shared security objectives. Lastly, collaboration on HADR and UN peacekeeping operation could further capacitate the armed forces in becoming a proactive and reliable contributing to regional and global peace and security efforts. In closing, the AAP believes that regional stability should not be altered due to actions and behavior contrary to internationally accepted norms and conventions. Thus, the preservation of the rules-based international order requires the commitment of the Philippines and Germany to working together in adhering with and advocating the tenets of international law. At the bilateral level, capacity and capability building will play a critical role in strengthening defense cooperation and enhancing interoperability between partners. In steering the future of this partnership, both parties must take decisive action in facilitating high-level defense and security talks, exploring concrete areas of collaboration, and enhancing interoperability. Thus, throughout this partnership, both parties must remain committed to the principle of collective security and collaborate in pushing for the enforcement of international law, particularly the UNCLOS, to ensure a free, open, and prosperous Indo-Pacific region. Once again, thank you very much to Stratbase and Conrad Adenauer Foundation for having us here and to participate in this very important and very timely forum on the Philippine-Germany relations. Good morning.
Thank you very much, General Cordova. All right. I'm sure many of you have questions that you would want to ask the General, especially after that very comprehensive presentation. Later on during our panel discussion, you'll be able to have that opportunity to ask questions to the General and of course to our other experts here as well. All right. So allow me to introduce our next speaker who will talk about the Philippines and Germany's shared commitment to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea and Maritime Security. He is the Deputy Naval Inspector General of the Philippine Navy. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Captain Francisco Cacho. Thank you, Captain.
To all the distinguished guests, the organizers, thank you also for having me. Right now, the Philippine Navy is celebrating its 127th anniversary. That's why the keynote speaker Rear Admiral Roy Benson Trinidad is currently away, and I'm his representative. Rest assured, all his ideas are captured in my presentation. So I will be talking on the Philippines and Germany's shared commitment to the UN Convention on the Law of the Seas and Maritime Security. The continuing and advancing commitment of the government and that of Germany builds on the 1974 administrative agreement concerning training of armed forces of the Philippines personnel and Germany, one of the Philippines' most longest defense cooperation frameworks of the Philippines with another country. With the evolving nature of threats and challenges and the shifting of political and economic balance in the Indo-Pacific region, cooperation expands in the fields of cybersecurity, defense arrangements, and logistics, and United Nations peacekeeping. On that lens, Germany established Indo-Pacific guidelines in 2020 to identify points of departure and opportunities for cooperating with partners in the region and to contribute to future overall European Union strategy. As an internationally active trading nation and proponent of a rules-based international order, it outlined long-term approach for engagement in the region. Its track focuses on EU actions for stronger security policy engagement, policy networks through multilateralism, promotion of rules-based international order, promotion of human rights, and commitment to sustainable UN Sustainable Development Goals. Under newly elected German Chancellor Honorable Friedrich Merz, Germany will have a clear focus on the Indo-Pacific. His leadership ought to pursue 144-page-long responsibility for Germany coalition agreement, which highlighted various domestic and global issues. And to highlight Philippines and Germany's shared commitment to UNCLOS and maritime security, the country adheres to CADC and AEDS as the strategic framework for the AFP in the Philippine Navy in interacting with international partners from peace to war to achieve collaborative security, collective defense, and extended deterrence. CADC, and in tandem of the Philippine Navy's operational strategy, or AEDS, is a defense policy that aims to protect and secure the Philippine territory, including its exclusive economic zone. It is designed to be broad defense operational strategy focused on force projection, the capacity of a state to deploy and sustain forces outside its territory. In essence, it enhances defense cooperation and opportunities. And most importantly, it facilitates activities and supports, as well as efforts in realizing these activities. This also provides the way ahead for stronger and meaningful ties with federal government of Germany. Thank you and mabuhay.
Thank you very much, Captain Francisco Cacho. Now it's time to talk about Germany's role in the Philippines' evolving defense strategy in the face of asymmetric security challenges. We have with us today a senior fellow from Kiel University's Institute for Security Policy. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Dr. Joachim Weber.
Ambassador, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, A good morning from me to everyone also on this occasion. Thanks for inviting, and thanks for this great opportunity on discussing very important things which are, I think, of equal interest for our both nations. Now, very limited time frame, so I just jump in, and I have 3 blocks here I want to do with you. One is very short, introducing myself and what I'm doing, 4 minutes. Germany and Asian security, and Germany and the Indo-Pacific, about 5 minutes. And then about the main issue of interest for us, the Philippines and Germany, our common interests, what can we do together, what is developing, 6 minutes. So let's get it started. First of all, I mentioned here with my affiliation with ISPK at Kiel University, which is true. I'm a senior fellow there, but I'm used to work with them full-time from 2017 to 20. So I'm still senior fellow in Kiel, but as a non-residential fellow. So my main job is working with University of Bonn at a center which is named CASIS, Center for Advanced Security Strategic Integration Studies. Integration is aiming at European integration. And this CASIS Center is a strategic think tank at the University of Bonn. And it's also holding or including the Henry Kissinger Professorship, which is run by my friend Ulrich Schlie. And well, having mentioned Kiel and CASIS at Bonn, you could also mention Munich and the University of the Armed Forces there. But those are the 3 considerable strong points in Germany where strategic issues are discussed. So those 3 clusters, I would say, are the most important one. In terms of universities, of course, there's also other institutions, foundations, and things like that, but only 3 universities who are really dealing in a serious way with strategic issues. So the difference to the foundations and all those is we have the students, which is very important because there's really a lack in Germany, and especially in the maritime dimension, as maritime domain. There's a lack in the strategic thinking as well, but I think it's especially strong really in the maritime domain, and I've been working a lot against sea blindness, how we call it. And the sea blindness lasted for decades in Germany, and it's just the recent years who rose awareness for the importance of the seas and all those things. So what I am doing at the university there in Bonn is I'm running since 5 semesters now, 5-6 semesters, classes on the maritime domain, and it's more and more students coming there. I'm really glad to see that. And at the beginning, I thought it would be a niche program, but it's not at all. More and more people are getting interested in that. And also, CASIS has so far the only master on strategic studies in Germany yet. It's a 2 years program, which started 2 years ago. So the first ones are through. The second class has started now. And that might be of some interest for you for collaboration as well. And well, so I'm doing it constantly at the University of Bonn now and trying to make a little strong post for the maritime domain in Germany. It should be also in Kiel, but it's Kiel, and the ISPK is more a research unit and not that much in teaching and giving seminars at the university. Okay, that was block number 1. The second one, Germany and Asian security, Germany and the Indo-Pacific. And I'm a strong believer in anecdotal evidence. And so I'd like to tell you one of those. And this goes back pretty much exactly a decade now. It was in late winter or early spring of 2015. And it was the issue of trying to bring German submarines to Australia. And 30 years before that, there was the Australian procurement, and they decided by that time for the Swedish Collins-class submarines. And we said, now, this is not going to happen to us again. And I was by that time in the Ministry of Economics. And since it was an export issue, Ministry of Economics was in charge of it. So I took the various ministries. I took, of course, the MOD with me. We had the Federal Foreign Office, of course, and a very proactive ambassador by the time in Australia. And we went there to find out, because we thought our contender must be the Swedes again. And so we went to Canberra. We had a very intensive week of talks, and we found out, don't worry about the Swedes at all. It was France who was the main contender there. Nobody knew in Berlin by the time. So we found out all the details, and I remember very well that one day we were sitting at the ASPI in Canberra, the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, and we were thinking about the German narration on the whole issue. And we were thinking in terms of about Germany as an active player in Asia, as sort of a Asian power, you know, being interested in the region and investing and doing here. And people from the board of ASPI were looking at us like, okay. And then the answer was to us, well, don't worry for that too much. You'll be considered first-class engineers. So sounds like a compliment, right? But it was a punch for us because we found out we are not really seen at that by the time 2015. Definitely not. So this is 10 years later now, right? And the world is changing, and it's changing a lot. And I can really tell you, it's definitely a difference in what Germany is aiming for, what Germany is looking at. And all that is about to change, and the country is really waking up in terms of security policy and what that means on a global scale, on a global level. Because we are having basically the same problem as you have. We have bullying neighbors as well, right? Sounds familiar to you? So we have a very strong and aggressive, more and more aggressive Russia in our vicinity, and you know what's going on in Ukraine. And of course, there's a lot of reports about the constant Chinese harassment of Philippines and their islands and the maritime domain at all, being really harassed by Chinese actions. So all that sounds familiar, I think, for both of us. So Germany is now definitely looking out for new partners in the region, because we are realizing that it's not wise to base your relationships on the big ones, as some people did in Germany with Russia. And also it's not very wise to base your relationships and your geopolitical strategy on one nation here in this region, which is getting more and more assertive about its role and challenging the rules-based order. So definitely Germany is about to change that and is looking for new partners and to diversify. That's a global and strategic approach here in Asia. And definitely there's a lot of music, if not, I would say the music is playing in Asia nowadays, and other regions are falling behind. So Asia is the probably geopolitically most important region currently from the geopolitical point of view. So third block. We are clear on that the rules-based international order is at stake, that it's highly endangered. And definitely we are working on the issue of developing more relationships with new partners, and definitely the Philippines is among those. And the question is, what can we do for each other? I think we can do a lot. And many of the things we can do have been mentioned already this morning in the other presentations. I think building up on this agreement of May 14th, mentioned for a number of times this morning already, is a very good idea. More training, more exchange, more development of those things is definitely needed. I think FONOPS, it has also been mentioned, the visit of the German employment little task force here a year ago. It's also very important. I think there must be FONOPS operations of this style constantly, like every 1 or 2 years. I think it's really necessary to give support to the national order and to the UNCLOS by doing it on a regular basis. So it's very clear that Taiwan Strait is not a part of China or something, a special rules or order. It's just a normal high sea, and anybody can use it. I think it's also about exchange of technologies, technology transfer. I think the German industrial base is still of a lot of interest to you. And well, the new German government has decided not only to take the first $100 billion, which the former Chancellor Scholz as a sign of Zeitenwende put into the federal forces. The new government decided to take another $500 billion to improve the German armed forces. And that is, I think, really a lot of money. So the industrial base is going to grow up again. And especially in the maritime domain, I think it's of interest to you. If you're looking for corvettes or frigates, you find partners in France and Italy and Spain and UK and in Germany, of course, but they can very much do similar things. If you're looking for the submarines, I can really tell you there's nothing competitive and comparable to TKMS products. Definitely, that would be the right way. And believe me, I'm not getting a dime or a pence from them at all. It's just, you know, for the Ministry of Economics, I was traveling around the world and visiting customers who had bought TKMS and the French Scopan and others. And I had many talks about like sufficiency and support for the client and things like that. So believe me, that is really, I think, your partner. That would be my suggestion, at least on that. So we shall and can learn, I think, a lot from the hybrid operations we are experiencing. We are experiencing with the Russians in the Baltics, and by the way, also with the Chinese, because you have heard about all the cases when cables and pipelines were destroyed, and usually it's not Russian ships. You know, it's ships of the Russian shadow fleet, and very often under Chinese flag or Chinese control. So it's very obvious that Russia is using their Chinese partners to get the job done, because there's a problem of accountability with those hybrid operations. So it's almost impossible to prove that it was not done like by accident or by mistake, but that those things are done intentionally. And I mean, there's no doubt that this is intentionally. If you are dragging the anchor 30 or 40 miles above the ground and you hit the pipeline or something, and you go on with the machine against it, I mean, it's by no means it can be non-intentional action. It's very clear, but it's very hard to prove. And so things like that. I'm also collaborating a lot, especially in relation to the Baltics with the Baltic republics, because they have a long, let's say, tradition of being harassed by their Russian neighbors. They have a lot of hybrid operations, more than any other NATO country, going on against them. And I've already done in the recent weeks 2 presentations together with the Latvian ambassador, Mrs. Vanaga, in Germany, because we can learn a lot from them about that kind of issues. So take our lessons we have learned together and exchange them, and it will be in the common interest of both of us. So many more things we can talk about maybe in the discussion. Currently, I would say seabed warfare is a very important issue in Germany, especially Kiel has started a lot of research on that. So control of the seabed, finding out what's going on, using the seabed for your purposes is a very demanding and future promising thing. Also, we are spending a lot of interest and effort now on critical maritime infrastructures, which were overseen in Germany also a lot, the sea blindness matter. But now we are realizing how important they are. And one more thing, the last thing I want to give you here on the way as the first input on that is, have in mind that all this must be a whole of governance approach. And we were very good in Germany, like seeing things in, you know, as separated issues. So the Navy was doing this, the Army was doing that, the Secret Service were doing this, and this is about infrastructures. But it's a whole of government approach if you want to be fit for our challenges and the hybrid challenges we are facing, and the threats and the ongoing operations, because it's all about our resilience. And resilience is a very wide concept and framework, and we must be very much aware of that jointness and bringing all actors together, which are relevant, is the probably most important issue and most important challenge for us. So, well, maybe more on all that in our discussion. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Joachim Weber, for that very insightful speech that you delivered, right? And today's final speaker will give us more details on exploring the prospects of an enhanced defense agreement between the Philippines and Germany. Joining us is an associate from the Asia Division of the German Institute for International and Security Affairs. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Dr. Christian Wirth.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you very much to Stratbase and also the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, of course, for the invitation to come here again. I've been for the first time in the Philippines in October, and it feels like it was almost last week. And of course, for the opportunity to speak to such a distinguished audience. The presentation title that was given to me is Exploring the Prospects of an Enhanced Philippines-Germany Defense Agreement. And I'd like to address this topic by talking about 4 questions, or trying to preliminary answer 4 questions. Now, before I start, obviously you've heard, and I'm quite impressed by the knowledge, especially of the armed representatives of the Philippine Armed Forces, about how much they know about Germany and German interests and how they can compare. It's actually it puts some pressure on me to, as somebody who's been dealing with the region for 10 years, but usually flying across the Philippines from Australia to Japan and China, Taiwan, South Korea, living there, but not really coming here much, to learn more about the Philippines and hopefully in the future also to contribute more to this bilateral relationship. Yeah, so as we have heard from previous presentations, the 2 defense ministers have signed this arrangement, as the German government would like to call it. They don't want to call it agreement because they see it not as a state-to-state contract which imposes mutual obligations, right? But it's a very administrative matter. It shows that cooperation in defense matters starts from a rather low base. It's a long-standing base, a significant base, but it's a low base. And so this, what happened last week, is a very important step. And it's, of course, the basis for many things that can come in the future, depending on the context and the resources available. I'd like to expand a bit on that. So the first question is, given the evolving regional security challenges, what key areas should potential future cooperation measures prioritize in order to make this bilateral relationship, bilateral cooperation on defense matters strategic and sustainable? Now, I guess it's important to remember that for a partnership to be strategic, for cooperation to be strategic, it really needs to address or implement measures that are effective in addressing common or perceived security threats and challenges. It must be based on the thorough debates about political developments and frank assessments of the situation in the respective countries. And only based on those, the measures will be in a way that really have tangible outcomes. And of course, in terms of being sustainable, especially politically sustainable, measures have to be grounded on common interests in both countries, on definition of national interests that transcend specific administrations. Obviously, we have changes in government every 4 years in the Philippines and in Germany, and the cooperative actions that need to be envisioned should transcend these governments, or changes in governments. So the bottom line, and I think Major General already outlined that, is that there needs to be a focus on very specific policy areas and measures that really aim at achieving realistic sets of gradually evolving goals. And in that way, of course, we've already heard Germany and the Philippines are facing quite similar challenges from big neighbors. And most of all have a very strong interest that states, especially those involved in maritime disputes, adhere to the provisions comprehensively laid out in the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. And in those cases where disputes concern questions of sovereignty, then of course that these nations also act in accordance with other legal provisions that exist in addition to the UNCLOS, so that disputes are resolved according to the law. And both countries also have a very strong interest that non-state actors using or moving in the maritime sphere are being regulated, that their actions comply with international as well as national laws, and thereby assure good order at sea and also the ecologically sustainable use of the ocean. Now, in order for states to manage that, technical capacity and political will are necessary. And these, in turn, are based on strong and united polities. So that means that it's useful, important that we apply, and I think previous speakers already have done that, to a comprehensive notion of security. We can't just reduce security to military matters. We have to include the Coast Guard, we have to include the cyberspace, and so on. So obviously future measures or projects of bilateral cooperation should be building on the exchange of lessons learned, of experiences in the respective regions. They should also engage in capacity building. I think that it doesn't, or it's certainly important to emphasize again the need and the challenge, actually, not just for the Philippines in the very vast South China Sea, but also for Germany in the Baltic, in the North Atlantic, in the North Sea, to improve the capabilities for having more transparency about what's going on in the oceans and undersea. And not least, I think that's the second area that's apparently already been discussed too, is the question of misinformation, interference in the cyberspace that both countries are facing, and an exchange of knowledge, of practices, and perhaps also about practices that happen in time, in real time, could be very useful. Now, Germany is quite far away from the Philippines. So the second question would be, how does this geographic distance between Germany and the Philippines affect what we can do? What we should be focusing on? What can Germany really bring to the region here? And I think, obviously, and we see that in debates about the US policy towards the region and others as well, geographical distance means that any kind of direct involvement in deterring military threats is extremely limited, if not impossible, by design, because it's impossible to, even if an actor has the military capacity, given the geographical distance, it's very difficult to convince an adversary that you would actually bring this military power to bear in the case of a crisis. Geographical distance always affects political will, if not capacity. And of course, it also affects the capability of an actor to provide reassurance, which is the other side of the coin of deterrence. So Germany can't really provide any capacities for contributing to deterrence in the region, I would say. Some people probably in Brussels will not readily agree with that, but I'm happy to discuss. So cooperation needs to be focusing on more basic areas, which are more sustainable and nonetheless important. And in addition to questions of enhancing maritime security, policing, coast guards, or also scientific research on the oceans, on ecosystems, fishery, the area of procurement, maintenance of systems for the surveillance of maritime sphere and for weapon system has been mentioned. Now, obviously, as you might know, the Philippine government intends to procure 2 submarines, and the German company TKMS Marine Systems has agreed with Italian shipbuilder Fincantieri that they would submit a common bid for that project. That's one area. I think if we look at, and I'm also not paid by TKMS for doing promotion for them, but if you look at Singapore, Germany-Singapore relations, where Singapore has already bought 6 of these submarines, is going to buy 2 more, you can really see that certainly in the defense military sphere, having this kind of commonality really also pushes collaboration in this dimension. course, for the Philippines, that then means, do we have other partners that are more important that could provide the same or kind of quality of submarines? But I leave that open. By previous speakers, because Germany is not part of the region, it hasn't any interest in any spheres of influence. It hasn't any necessities for upholding alliance relationships. It has been for a short time a colonial actor, but that seems to be not influencing contemporary politics, not here and not in Germany. And that means Germany can act as a kind of honest broker in Europe as part of the European Union, but also on the global scale, and help to convince others that the Philippines problems are not just the Philippines problems alone, that they are not regional problems only, but other actors, anybody in the international sphere who is not a great power especially, should be interested in this and help support the Philippines. And not just the Philippines, but international law. And here, especially, I think it's important to make sure that German and other Europeans' actions in the sense of providing note verbal and criticizing certain Chinese actions are seen as independent assessments of what they think is not right and shouldn't be happening, and not, as the Chinese government likes to say or portray it, as just being performed because the US wants it to be. Right? But it's done because it's wrong, or criticized because it's wrong. And then, of course, we have defense diplomacy. I think this shouldn't be discounted. This annual or biannual deployments of German armed forces to the region, they, I think, will continue also under the new government, and they will also come to Southeast Asia. If you look at the speech by the new Chancellor from last week, which was very comprehensive on all policy fields, he still mentioned the Indo-Pacific, and not just the Indo-Pacific, and long-standing four kind of Western partners in the Indo-Pacific, but he explicitly also mentioned Southeast Asia. So I would expect that to continue. At the same time, I think these actions or these presence operations are mainly useful for shoring up the German determination, political statements, and make stronger bilateral connections and cooperations. They are not really having much value beyond that. Third question, how does the Philippine security landscape in turn impact the security and stability of Germany and the entirety of Europe? I think the security and stability of Europe is mainly being decided upon in Europe, in European capitals. And that's another aspect I'd like to bring in. Because also in Europe, you have different political movements, and those that really change the course of foreign policies or have the potential to do so come from right-wing governments. There have been significant movements. They are organized in political parties, and they also get support from big entities abroad. And we shouldn't be discounting this kind of scenarios where some of these parties comes to power and they will have a different view on Russia in Europe, and maybe also on China to some extent. So the fate of Europe is decided by Europe and by actors in Moscow and Washington. Especially these days, those in Washington also count. And that doesn't make cooperation with the Philippines less important. Actually, it does, right? As Major General already said. It makes European actors more aware that they need to, same as the Philippines, look out for new partners, diversify their relations, in addition to deepening the existing ones. Fourth question, how can Germany's experiences with NATO cooperation shape its approach to building new defense partnerships with non-NATO countries? NATO and Asia-Pacific, Indo-Pacific has been a matter of discussion. what can we do or think, what should we think about that aspect? Now, NATO has been founded for the territorial defense of Europe. After the end of the Cold War, of course, this mission diminished. NATO has established two frameworks for cooperating with non-members, Partnership for Peace for anybody, for actors in Europe and the former Soviet Union. And now later the partners across the globe, where especially Australia, New Zealand, South Korea, and Japan could interact with NATO. And I believe the global war on terror has been a background for that kind of relationships. So the question is, you know, what can we do? What should we think about Philippines and NATO's partners across the globe? I don't have any definite opinion on that. I'm not a NATO specialist, and I'm not a specialist on Philippine-Europe relations. But I think there also we need to also apply some care, be careful to come to two quick conclusions. I think the ministries, those who are making policies at the moment are very well aware of that. But sometimes in the public sphere, they can be hyperbole. So obviously, since Russian attack on Ukraine in February 22, NATO has been very clearly focused on this immediate threat, and has been struggling to do so because of the lack of military capacities, and it will take a very long time to rebuild those. Thus, that will be the focus. And if NATO is interested in threats or interaction of threats from outside, of course, that makes sense. But it can be not much more than an interest, right? And of course, attempts to garner support, continuous support, such as from Australia, from Japan, for the Ukraine. But it's not realistic to think that NATO could be any force in influencing things outside of Europe much. In fact, I think for the Philippines still, and that's quite obvious, partners in the region, those where the Philippines already has established strong ties, so visiting force agreements or reciprocal access agreements, the ones that have been signed and the ones that are going to be signed are much more important and valuable. So here NATO remains in the room, and it remains to be an organization to be noticed, perhaps talked about, talked with, but it can't be really an organization that engages proactively outside of Europe. These are more for my four kind of lines of argument or thought, and I'm looking forward to learn more from you later. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Christian Wirth. All right, so before we proceed to our panel discussion, may we request our speakers to please join us in front for a quick photo opportunity, please. So may we ask Major General Romel Cordova, please, Captain Cacho, Dr. Weber, and Dr. Wirth, and also, of course, Ambassador Fafanoshka, Daniela, please, and Professor Manhit. Maybe we can turn off the projector first. All right, thank you very much. And may I ask our speakers to please join me on stage for our panel discussion. And I will also be joining the panel in my capacity as the Deputy Executive Director of the Strat-Based Institute, and will be moderating the discussion. All right. All right. Feel free to sit anywhere. Oh, okay. I think I'll stay here, and then our speakers will be staying on stage. All right. Okay, so I have some preliminary questions for our speakers, and then later on, I'll open the floor for questions from our participants here in the room. All right, my first question is for General Cordova, sir. Since we've been talking about the Defense Cooperation Agreement or arrangement between the Philippines and Germany, so last week that was signed, as we have been saying this morning. And what tangible outcomes, sir, can we expect from this recently signed arrangement? And how do you think will these translate to concrete actions such as or projects such as perhaps joint exercises or capacity building initiatives? What do you expect to come out from this arrangement, sir?
The recent arrangements will further strengthen the current series of mechanisms, dialogue mechanism we had with the German Armed Forces and the Ministry of Defense. As I've said, last week we attended the second or third defense policy staff talks. We in 2020 last year we hosted the here in Manila the policy staff talks. And last year we tried to identify some areas of engagement, particularly in training. And the tangible result of that is that they invited our staff for training in Germany last year for the cooperation staff talks. Now, this year, after last week, actually we'll be hosting in July the second cooperation staff talks with the Department of the Armed Forces within the Ministry of Defense. So these are series of dialogues as well as key leaders engagement. These are, to that respect, that's tangible already. But this resulted in not only promoting more opportunities for training. As of now, currently we have one student from the, I think, Philippine Army doing the German staff course. And there will be more training. We discussed this last week, but the details will be further thrashed out in the cooperation meeting talks later this or in July. Now, these are just in the area of capacity building, training. But because of the arrangement, we are now talking about not only participating in exercises or combined exercises, but also developing our defense industry. As you know, Congress just recently and the President has just recently signed a law on revitalizing the self-reliant defense posture program. And within the Defense Department, they created a new office who will take a look at this, who will manage the self-reliant defense posture program, which is essentially developing local defense industry. And in this respect, I think Germany will play a critical role in since they are one of the technology-led leaders in Europe, in the world. They will play a critical role in how we can build and strengthen our defense, local defense industry. The particular interest of the department is really on a lot of things. You have emerging technologies like cyber and unmanned aerial systems, but also includes productions of foundational elements like ammunitions, as well as building a resilient supply chains, so establishing a maintenance, repair, and overhaul facilities for aircraft or surface vessels. So these are just things. So there are a number of opportunities, and we hope that we can tap into the expertise of the German defense industry as well, and as well as helping us in our. Currently, we are undertaking the third horizon of the Armed Forces Modernization Program. And there are some procurement that may have some level of cooperations with the Ministry of Defense and the defense industry of the Germany. In fact, during our discussion last week, we agreed that um, we may be sending. They proposed, the German side from the Ministry of Defense proposed that the Philippines will be sending a team to look at to survey the defense industry and explore areas for further cooperation. So these are just one of the ways where we can put tangible uh, uh, effects on the arrangement.
All right, thank you very much, sir, for being very generous with these information. But allow me to ask very quick follow-up questions, sir. First, in terms of tangible outcomes, are you also exploring possibly joint patrols with Germany, maybe even in areas where there are Chinese ships present?
That was always
Mhm.
on the table.
Mhm.
In fact, our joint sales is on a monthly basis. So we're offering not only to Germany but to everybody
Monthly basis with different countries,
with
sir.
different countries.
But
So
the ones in Germany.
whoever is able to join us, they are very much welcome. And if they are willing to sail as close to those areas, then we are also
Even in areas with Chinese present.
yes. So it's now depend on the risk appetite of the partner. So it depends. So we are all open. It's scheduled on a monthly basis. It's pretty regular. Whether it's with the U.S., whether it's bilateral or whether it is multilateral, it's pretty regular. And the Navy will be able to explain it further. And this is not only about joint sails in the surface. We can joint patrols over the air or exercises. In fact, exercises on the ground or collaboration on the ground is also on the table. Our special operations forces showed interest, both sides, ours from the Philippines and German Armed Forces Special Operations Units shows interest in collaborate. On what areas I cannot divulge that, but this type of when this type of units already shows interest in collaborating, then that's another level of engagement. It shows a much deeper relationship and trust.
Maybe we can ask Ambassador about the risk appetite of Germany. No, I'm kidding, sir. I'm kidding. I don't want to put you on the spot. Yeah. Would you like to answer it? Oh, okay. Thank you for being generous as well.
Well, let me try. Risk appetite is always relative. And before the risk appetite, I think we have to also take into account the real capacities in the region. And as one of our speakers already referred to, the Indo-Pacific deployment has been here last year. The German government has a commitment to continue these things, but this will definitely not lead to a permanent presence, which would allow regular joint patrol or exercises. So I think these will remain also for the future. Let's be realistic, and some expectation management is also needed. This will remain very singled out exercises or patrols that might happen at the occasion of an IPD, Indo-Pacific Deployment unit being deployed to the region. So it's less about risk appetite. As you know, the IPD-24 last year sailed through the Taiwan Strait. You might take this as an indicator for a certain risk appetite, but it will not be on a regular basis.
But more than one. All right. All right. Thank you very much, Ambassador. To Captain, yes, since we started talking about China already, considering the recently signed arrangement, how do you think can the Philippines and Germany jointly respond to China's increasingly aggressive actions in the West Philippine Sea, particularly through deterrence and defense diplomacy, since we've been talking about that?
As it has been emphasized by Major General Cordova or J5, as well as the discussions also of the previous speakers. The Philippine Navy looks forward to the participation of Germany, particularly on areas which I have laid down in the presentation. One is developing our capabilities through joint exercises, developing our technology for us to be able to upgrade our capabilities. As you all know, our operational area, maritime zone, involves a lot of resources, and that's one point wherein Germany can come in and help us capacitate our Navy as well as other major services of the armed forces. So those are the areas that we are looking forward to working with Germany.
Sir, just to follow up on that, what do you think are the biggest capability or interoperability gaps wherein Germany can help the Philippines?
It has been already mentioned. One is the cybersecurity, and another one is undersea warfare capabilities, and a lot more. So these are the things that we are looking forward for us to be able to modernize our armed forces. Our policy on CADC involves a lot in modernizing our armed forces, as well as seeking support of our political leaders, the government, and the civilian sector.
All right, for our German experts, in light of the persistent maritime coercion in the West Philippine Sea, how do you think can Germany's diplomatic and naval posture serve as a force multiplier for the Philippines' efforts to in upholding upholding UNCLOS and the rules-based international order?
Well, I think the most important thing is, of course, to continue with a rather consistent policy towards these maritime disputes in terms of diplomatic statesmen and so on. And I think the ambassador and other ambassadors have been very much, on top of this and really monitoring what's happening and reacting in an appropriate way. And of course, the other dimension of that is when it comes to Germany-China relations, that this has to be factored in as well. And I'm quite confident that a new government, and also where the Chancellery and the Foreign Minister come from the same party, would be able to message much conciser what their China policy is, so that we are on a good track. When it comes to the operational maritime dimension or sphere, I would be cautious. And obviously we have these deployments that hopefully will happen again every 2 years from the Navy, and they will be designed in a way that the signaling, the right signaling will be happening, but it's just signaling to underscore the political messages. And I don't think there is capacities, not least on against the background of the Ukraine war, and other challenges in the Middle East, and the Western Indian Ocean is there as well. That really, there won't be much more capacity to sail into these waters.
All right. How about you, sir?
I think there's not much I have to add on that. So I think it was the answer is given, but in terms of what we can really do when it's coming to difficulties here in the region, that is of course very, very limited, and it's going to be more limited depending on how the Ukraine issue is going to go on, because we don't know if this will be settled in the near future or not. I don't see too much hope for it, because the way Trump is acting now is not very helpful in finding a good and lasting solution for the conflict. So it's rather reducing the likelihood that this will be settled rather soon. So if this case is not going to be settled, we'll be really in trouble for many years in Europe. And we are in a situation in which we cannot completely exclude anymore the possibility that Russia is aiming for more. So depending on what the outcome of their aggression against Ukraine will be, there might be also more and more operations against the Baltic states, and testing out how far Russia can go in challenging the alliance, challenging NATO, because with this changes in Washington and the new Trump policy, it's not clear anymore if the Americans will be really 100% reliable partner for us. It's getting wrong, if things are getting wrong, and there are more and more people in the strategic community in Europe worrying that Russia by 2028, 29, 2030, different numbers are given by each strategist, you know, but that Russia might try out even on a really full-scale attack on Europe. So this is definitely then limiting our possibilities to do other issues like 15,000 kilometers away from there. So I think we have to build up much more on equipment and rendering our forces more capable. But it looks like that we are going to need them at home very soon. And so this is definitely really a cutback on possibilities on having like German power projection here in the region.
I have more follow-up questions, but I'll let our participants ask questions first. Do we have any questions from our participants? Yes, sir. Maybe you can introduce yourself and the organization and your question.
Thank you very much. I'm Eric Feusel from the German Philippine Chamber of Commerce. And some of our German companies who operate here in the Philippines in that sector, in the sort of bidding process, get hit with very high taxes on when it doesn't go through the ministries directly, especially on the facilities enhancement. And that really is, well, putting them off to invest here in the Philippines. And I don't know if there's any sort of plan or progress to maybe reduce, especially the custom taxes or VAT or something like this in this area, where the AFP maybe is pushing for change.
These issues were actually raised last week, and I think some of the issues related to export licenses and the related costs. And it's not my area of expertise, but there is just I'm just part of the discussion in the Ministry of Defense, in our Department of Defense, about as I've said, with respect to the creation of this office, the Office for managing the self-reliant defense posture program, and I think they are looking into these areas, and hopefully we can find solutions to address these issues.
Do we have any more questions? All right. Any more questions? Or if not, I'll ask my follow-up questions now. Okay. Also included in the recently signed defense cooperation arrangement is defense armament and logistics. So for our defense experts from Germany, you were talking about also that Germany is has its own problems in your side of the world, and that you might need them back eventually in Germany. But how do you think can Germany contribute to modernizing the Philippines' defense posture, particularly in terms of maritime domain awareness and air sea capabilities, considering that you also have your own needs in Germany and in Europe?
Well, I think there's many opportunities on that. And it was mentioned already that Germany is definitely a technology leader. And the technological level of our defense industries is still very high, and it's going to definitely improve. And they were underfinanced, and our defense industries have been shrinking for basically 30 years, because with the changes of 1990, when we were all thinking about that we are only encircled by friends anymore, you know, and then all that is not needed anymore. And there was also a strong pacifist movement in Germany. which always wanted to reduce those industries because they thought it's bad to have defense industries, you know, it should be all about peace and not about military and all those nasty things anymore. So this is over. This is the past, you know, and people are realizing and the people are supporting in their overwhelming majority that this needs to be back. And so it was still in the right moment. I think if we would have waited another 10 years or so, probably the basis of the German defense industries would have shrunk to a certain point in which we would not have been really anymore on, like, among the top nations in the technological sense. It still came in time, and the amount of money which is taken now is so high. It's so many hundred billion of dollars or euros. I mentioned it already. And you see it, how the companies are developing, what they are doing. They were just waiting on contracts, so they were a little reluctant because the 30 years before were still in their bones, and they were not sure, like, if we invest, will we ever see a return on that? But now it's clear, and the contracts are signed, and the planning is there, and so they are investing and with us on that journey, and I think we can help you a lot with those technologies, and we shall find arrangements and possibilities on that exchange, and a lot of things, like also for defending the Philippines, will be reside on that.
All right. Go ahead, sir. Oh,
Yeah. Last week also, Defense Minister Pistorius shared a very big problem that Secretary Teodoro wish he has. The Minister of Defense of Germany is tasked to, he has about 500 billion euros to to spend. And for defense, that's 500 billion or million? Billion, yeah. So, and the Secretary of National Defense, Secretary Teodoro was jokingly saying, I wish I had that problem, because we are out, the trust of the Defense Department right now and the Armed Forces of the Philippines is to really develop our deterrence capability. And we hope, as the Germany Defense Department and the Armed Forces undertakes its military modernization in terms of whether it's armament or other capability areas, that we can work together. There is certainly a lot of opportunities to work together. Yes, there are still some issues on how we can streamline processes and reduce costs. But what's good is that there's shared interest in working together in these areas. In fact, as I've said earlier, our counterparts at the ministry, Defense Ministry, invited personnel from the Defense Department also to visit Germany and look at the defense industry and where we can work together with, whether it is with respect to ammunitions or certain technologies, and it's open. Yeah.
yes, Dr.
Thank you. Yeah, just because this number of 500 billion has been mentioned several times, from my superficial knowledge, I think the number comes from the agreement between the parties to relax the constitutional debt rate, right? It doesn't mean the 500 billions are spent, and they are not spent all on military. So there's many different aspects included in security policies that go under, including infrastructure, possibly. So this is not decided. Yeah, it's not decided yet. So, but of course, yeah, as you mentioned, the defense minister has some small problem in deciding how he can spend this as fast as possible, as efficiently as possible. But his bigger problem, I guess, and I hope you don't have that, is the manpower. There's not enough people who want to sign up to the armed forces. And that, of course, also affects Indo-Pacific deployments, because people who come over here, as much as they like it, they spend a lot of man hours, which are not available in Europe. And if you read one of the newest policy papers coming out from the Navy of how they want to achieve their goals, I think its title is Marine 2035. They envision, of course, much bigger capabilities, more ships, more drones, and so on. But they also line out the fact that or highlight the fact that they need to drastically include the readiness of their forces, given the threats from Russia in the Baltics, in the North Sea, in the North Pacific, in the North Atlantic, and the possible decline of US support. So this will also affect the situation. But of course, you're right. That really doesn't concern the defense industry. The situation there is somewhat different. There, it's not necessarily about manpower. And the other aspect I think will be important is how much money the Foreign Affairs Office will have. For spending money on things like the drones that have been provided, although probably more symbolic, but still significant, and for these kind of projects. And that's something we don't know yet. So let's hope that there will be money at least as much as there had been before.
Thank you. Any question? Do we have questions? All right. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Eva Oskam. I'm the political secretary at the Dutch Embassy. I'm very aware that I'm surrounded by Navy and Coast Guard military, which is very iron focused. But I think one of the biggest challenges in the Philippines is also something that your bully is very good at, is the hybrid warfare. So anytime there have been incidents in the West Philippine Sea, they're parallel to that. There were disinformation campaigns, AI-generated videos of your president, etc. And it's very clear that they're linked to each other. If I'm not mistaken, cyber's a part or one of the pillars of the new agreement. So I'm wondering maybe if the German speakers can elaborate on what that cyber cooperation will look like, but more from the Filipino side, also what is needed to be more prepared for hybrid warfare.
All right. From our experts, would you like to answer first, sir?
Yeah. That's one of the priorities actually of the Department of National Defense. And in fact, we discussed that last week. Also during our Chief of Staff, General Bronner, when he joined or attended the Munich Security Conference last February, he actually, when he attended that conference, he brought along with him our Joint Staff for Civil Military Operations, J7, who's in charge of the cognitive domain, civil military operations, information warfare, as well as the commander of AP Cyber Command. It was very purposive trip because when they met with his counterpart, the Chief of Defense of Germany, they discussed about cooperation in this particular area. There is certain interest in learning and how Germany was able to converge these different domains like cyber, information, and addressing the cognitive domain into one, the creation of a cyber command or something, a unit, which is actually the model that Singapore used when they organized also the digital intelligence service, which consolidates command and control systems, cyber systems, and information warfare. So this is an area for further collaboration with Germany and other countries, to include Canada, because of that very reason, the way our adversary is using disinformation, misinformation, and malign influence. So we have a lot to learn. However, there are still some policy issues that we need to clear out or iron out. Like this, when you talk about cyber, it's you're talking about classified matters already. And yes, we have this defense arrangement, but we need to have a clearer arrangement on how to share classified information. So, but the learning from each other through subject matter exchanges is a first step, and we hope that we can, through the cooperation talks on July, we can further stress out the details on how we can collaborate more effectively in this area. But certainly, there's a great interest from within the department and also from I think the other security institution of the country.
Yes, go ahead, Captain.
The approach to that challenge is basically at the higher level, as mentioned by our J5. But then, as I see it, the policy approach is one thing that we need to consider. And speaking of my observation and my deployment in the Middle East, basically the cognitive domain is shaped by the people in power. So it's easily controlled. But yet again, I would like to subscribe to the policy that will be crafted to address that challenge.
Just if I may add one point beyond the immediate security or military sphere. I mean, as far as I understand from discussions, the problem with disinformation, is one of the biggest problems at all is the regulation of social media. In Europe, the legislation for that would be there. The question is, how do you implement it, and how do you implement it against political pressure from various sides? There's enormous stakes involved, and this is a major political challenge, but that will be certainly, I guess, an area for exchange.
We also have other military officials here. Maybe we can also, if you would like to also address the question on how Germany can help address the problems of misinformation, disinformation, even malign influence operations and political warfare. Maybe Colonel Francel. And also General Valencia later on, sir. I'll call you. All right, Colonel Francel.
Thank you very much, sir. As already our J5 has said, in the Armed Forces of the Philippines underscores that there are already two domains of operations that we are currently more of like at war with words already in terms of information and the cyber domain. And so we take into consideration that whenever we do bilateral talks, multilateral engagements, cyber is one big portion of that because we have to address the borderless nature of cyber. So who will address certain instances if perpetrators are from other countries and the victims are from other countries? So this is one arrangement that Germany can have in terms of our bilateral talks with them and engagements in terms of cyber incidents. So with that, we also need to acknowledge the great online presence of the Filipino people. We used to be the tax capital of the world, and now we spend around 8 to 10 hours in social media. But we have to look at this as a silver lining to the cloud, that we can leverage this as a superpower in the information domain. So if we can use this to our advantage in having every Filipino in the cyber domain talk about the real narrative out there with our transparency initiative, we can use this to the advantage of the Filipinos. And with our partnerships with other nations, this is also going to be more cascaded worldwide.
Well, first of all, I would just to say that I'm happy with what I'm hearing. So I would not pose a question, but probably put you to some direction. The National Security Council is actually promoting the nexus of defense, security with economic development. And the defense cooperation must take into consideration this, because economic development is the sustaining element for partnership and further defense improvement. So SRDP is one road. SRDP is one road, but there are other industries. We promote also convergence planning with other agencies of government to support defense requirements. So there are dual uses of things that you can reach that nexus of economic development and national security. And that is a route that this new defense cooperation can take. On FIMI, or foreign interference and malign influence, we are now focused on internal resilience. How do we become resilient as a nation on this barrage of information? But beyond that, the cooperation can take also our messages outside. Meaning to say, this new cooperation can probably bring our messages in the West Philippine Sea beyond our borders, for them to understand what is the Philippines stand and how they can commit to a rules-based international order, bringing us to the global south, bringing us to other countries, bringing our navies, talking about how we are experiencing the aggression in the West Philippine Sea. I hope I helped.
Thank you very much, Ben. All right. Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? All right. Yes, sir.
I'm retired Lieutenant General Adan. Hybrid warfare, cyber warfare has been discussed. It was reported that in Taiwan alone, there are at least 5,000 spies from mainland China. And I believe in the Philippines now, there is also that activity going on. Germany has a lot of experience on espionage wars, the shadow war. Besides the active operations to identify, ferret out spies, the country also needs a strong legal framework, laws that addresses espionage. Perhaps this is one area where Germany could help the Philippines, developing our legal structure, infrastructure to counter espionage. May I have your comments, please?
I used to study law, but I'm not a specialist in this field. But yeah, it sounds attractive and a way of a topic to talk about, at least to bring some specialists into contact and see what they think in this area. If I may react to a general's point about economic development, I really think when this is an important lesson at our institute, and we are publicly funded by the government, independent, and tasked with advising the government. So we have many delegations coming over from Asia, talking to us, and also hoping, of course, that we will, continue to relay these messages to government officials. And we have these track 1.5 dialogues with a number of countries in Southeast Asia. And what really, one lesson that comes out is really the first and most important thing is for people in Berlin to spend the time, right, to political attention for the region in the first place. Right? That's one of our missions or challenges to bring this challenge or kind of redirect this attention. And one way, or perhaps the only way to really significantly influence that in a positive way is economic development. Right? It's not just a topic for the Philippines, but it's also a topic for Europeans. So the stronger the economic ties are, the stronger the other ties can be as well. So now, of course, for Germany, that means that part of this is out of its control, right? It's a European matter, whether there be any free trade agreements or not. But this is something to highlight, right? Economic ties matter, not just between the Philippines and Germany, but also Germany and other Southeast Asian countries, very big countries, where political ties and political tension is just not there, despite all this talk in security matters, because economic ties are underdeveloped.
Dr. Bieber?
Yes, I'd like to add something on that. I think we have specialists for everything in Germany, and we have very good specialists on that issue. The problem here, from my perspective, is not the specialists and our knowledge and tools, etc. The problem here is the public, because our politicians have been telling the public for decades and decades we are not threatened, we are living in peace, everything is fine, the authorities are taking care of everything what could ever happen to you, so don't worry about anything. And so there's no awareness in the public about espionage, sabotage, and all those issues. It's true, we didn't have it for a very long time, but it's now coming in a big surge. It's really a wave which is coming, and many things are going on. It's not only about the maritime domain and the pipes and the cables and all those very well-known issues which have been discussed in the media. There's a lot of very clearly Russian operations going on. So they like make a fence and of a barracks, and they go there and make a hole in like the water supply of it. And even if they don't put something in, poison or so, even if they don't put it in, but you see the fence is broken and there's a hole, you know, and this equipment for providing the barracks with water. So it's causing a lot of like anxiety and issues like that. That's the whole purpose of it, making it. Or another example, like in Berlin, a factory was burning, which was building for the Iris-T rockets, which are delivered to Ukraine for the air defense of their cities and stuff like that. So many things like this are going on, and the public is doesn't know anything about this. So it's a matter of education. It's a matter of crisis communication, of risk communication, and I think we need to put a lot of effort on that, because the public feels like being not protected anymore, because for 30 and 40 years they've heard from the politicians everything is fine, you don't need to be aware of anything. And now many things are going on, like also like planes, you know, with bombs or like things setting them on flames on board and stuff like that. So it's a lot of intimidation going on, and the authorities, I think, are still underestimating the need of making a counter-offensive on that, like by the crisis and risk communication on that, to educate the people on that, to make clear to them, well, it's not that everything is out of control, but we have to be more careful about that. And indeed, too many things in Germany are too easy accessible. Like we had cases when the steering of the whole railway system was attacked. It's unclear in this case if it were just terrorists or was it like Russian Secret Service. And so for almost a day, no train in the country could run anymore. And those cables, it's two of them, which are very important for all of the countries, many regional systems, but it's only two cables for all of the country. And it was unprotected. If you knew where it is, you even didn't have to dig for that. You could just go there and, you know, cut it. And this shouldn't be the case anymore. You need to dig those things. That not every idiot can go there, you know, and cut this cable if he knows where it is. So many issues. That's what I meant with like this concept of for total defense. You know, it's about our resilience as a whole. And this is definitely a very important part on that, and not that much the number of tanks or artillery pieces and then howitzers we're going to have.
All right. And I think on that note, we will be ending our panel discussion because I'm being told we don't have time left anymore. So once again, thank you very much to our panelists. Let's give them another round of applause, please. Thank you very much, General Cordova, Captain Cacho, Dr. Weber, and Dr. Wirth for joining us this morning. All right. And to you may go back to your seats now. All right, and to formally close this forum, may I call on the country director of the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung Philippines, Ms. Daniela Brown.
Yes, thank you so much. In Germany, we have a saying, everything has been said, but not from everyone. So please bear with me for another 5 minutes. So as we draw this conference to a close, allow me to extend my deepest gratitude to every one of you in this room for your presence, for asking questions, but also for your commitment to this growing partnership between Germany and the Philippines. I am particularly grateful, of course, to our resource speakers for sharing their ideas and their perspectives with us. And I would also like to express my deep gratitude to StratBase, to our partner, to Professor Dindo, to Joyce for organizing this forum with CAS Philippines in cooperation. So over the course of the sessions, we've witnessed an exchange of ideas, strategies, and perspectives grounded in mutual respect and a shared understanding of the evolving, complex global security environment. And we have heard from defense leaders, strategic thinkers, and also operational experts, all reaffirming the urgent need for deeper cooperation in the face of the regional but also global challenges. This partnership of our two nations is not new, but I think it is very clear that this is entering now a new and vital phase. Amidst a deteriorating security environment in Europe and rising tensions here in the Indo-Pacific, there is a clear and growing desire on both sides, not only to diversify the partnerships, what we have heard, but there's also a shared interest to working with each other. Let me be very candid. Germany does not aspire to become a primary security provider in this region, nor do we have the capabilities to take on such role. But I think there is a role for Germany, and what we do bring to this region and to this evolving partnership is a deep commitment to peace, to multilateralism, to the rules-based international order, and innovation in defense and security policy. On the Philippine side, we see a partner with deep regional insights, an increasingly capable defense sector, and a steadfast commitment to sovereignty and freedom of navigation. These are values that resonate deeply with us, with Germany, and they form the foundation of this growing partnership. But of course, no partnership is without its challenges. I think a key issue ahead is ensuring institutional resilience. The Philippines is a vibrant democracy, one that, like many democracies, experience shifts in foreign and security policy with each administration. So looking ahead to 2028 and beyond, we also must ask, how do we build a partnership that endures political cycles? I believe it is not only fair, but essential that we address such questions together with openness and mutual respect. So looking forward, we at Konrad Adenauer Stiftung Philippines, together with our partners like StratBase, we are committed to continue this dialogue. We will continue to analyze the geopolitical shifts in the region and explore how Germany and Europe can contribute meaningfully to the evolving security architecture in the Indo-Pacific. Whether in Europe or in Asia, the security of one region increasingly resonates in the other. Our growing defense and strategic ties are not only a matter of necessity, they are a reflection of the mutual trust and shared values and interests. So let us build on that trust steadily, honestly, and with purpose. Thank you so very much. Maraming salamat. Dankeschön. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniela. And all right, and that concludes our forum for this morning. Thank you very much for joining us. And please do stay with us for lunch. We have lunch, right? Yes, we have lunch. All right. So please join us for lunches after this noon. And we hope you all have a good rest of the day, everyone. Again, I'm Joyce Reyes. Thank you for joining us.